Today's episode has been all about celebrating our friends and our family, the people that we're so happy to have in our lives. And what better way to celebrate those people than to invite them all over for dinner? And if you're a paper crafter, then you're going to want to make some fancy place cards to say welcome and here's where you belong. It's a nice little keepsake too for people to take home with them. I want to show you how easy it is to make these really cool pop-up place cards. So I'm going to use an electronic cutter. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own pattern. So I'm going to go right into here to the shapes, and I want to have 2 of these squares. And I want to make my squares actually into rectangles. And I want them to be 3 inches. So I'm going to reduce this here. Oops, I reduced a little too fast. I got a heavy lead foot on the reducing. And again, I want it to be a rectangle. So I'm going to change the aspect ratio by hitting the aspect ratio button. And I want it to be just 1/2 inch wide. So we're going to go all the way down. Let's see if I can get it right this time. A little bit slower there on the pedal. Oops, now I've gone too far again. And you just get it exactly the way you want it. Now I have 2 long skinny pieces. That's right what I want. I'm going to say set, and they're going to be right there on my mat. Now I actually want to add 1 more piece, but I'm going to do it in a kind of funny way. I'm going to go into my editing function, and I have 1 of these skinny rectangles, and I'm going to again choose into the editing, and I'm going to say I want another one, and it's going to say okay, and it's going to give me an identical one to it. But now I'm going to edit it and change it slightly, because this one, instead of being 3, I want it to be 4. So I'm going to hit that aspect ratio because I still want it to be the 1/2 inch, and I'm going to go on up to 4 inches. Now the reason that these measurements have been chosen is because I want my place cards to be essentially 3 by 4 when they're folded. So that's what we're building, is we're building the back piece of the place card. And the good news is you only have to do this once. Once you save this template in, you can make as many place cards as you want over and over and over again. So I have my first piece here, right? This is the one that's 3 inches. This is the one that's 4 inches, and I want to rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, okay. And I'm going to say okay again. And now I'm going to use the edge here to align these so that they line up pretty carefully. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull this down a little, pull that up a little, but I'm using the left edge of my screen, okay, to do all the aligning. That just really helps me. And I can grab a hold of it, move it around. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one just out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead to the grouping function, and I want to select those 2 that are up there in the corner. Okay. And now I'm going to say okay again. I want to weld them, and that's this choice here. And it's going to say, is it okay to weld these? And it is irreversible. And I say, yeah, that's great. That's exactly what I want to do. Now I'm going to drag this over to the right side. Again, this is to help me align everything. I'm going to take my other matching leg, and I'm going to put it here. Now, when you're welding, it's really important that your pieces overlap slightly. So if I go in and look at it closely, you can see that in fact right here, they do overlap. So now I know I'm getting a good weld, so I'm happy. If you want to get really fussy with it and take some time, there are arrow keys so you can adjust it a little bit down, a little bit up, and get it just right. So once I'm happy, I'm going to go to the grouping, but instead of needing to select an area, these are my only pieces that are on here. I'm going to select the whole canvas. I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to weld it again. Okay, so I have my back piece welded on. That's fantastic. And again, as I mentioned, you can save it now into the memory so that you have that forever. I would do that. But since we don't need to do that right now, I'm going to go ahead and add my another 2 pieces. I'm going to say add. This time, I'm going to choose the regular rectangle shape. And I want this to be 3 by 4 because as I mentioned, right, we are going to make these place cards at 3 by 4. So it's 4 inches wide, and the height, we're going to change that aspect ratio so I get it exactly the size that I want it. So we're going to bring it right up to 3. Here we go. Oops, and I've gone too far. I always go too far. Julie, you go too far. And then once I have it, I say, okay, set, that's what I want. But now we get to add the fancy part. So I'm going to choose add. I'm going to go into the designs, and I want a fancy flourish. So when I see the flourish I like, I'm going to grab it, and I want the size. I don't really care. I'm just going to say okay, but I want to have 2 of them. So I'm going to change the number to 2, set, and now here I have 2. There's 1, there's 2. And I'm going to go back into that editing function because what I want to do is I want to flip one of them. There you go, flip it. Okay, and now if I butt them right up against each other, I will be able to get this really cool big flourish. And again, I need them to overlap. And if I zoom in, you can see that in fact they do overlap. So once they overlap, I'm going to select the ones that I want. And I go right back down and select them. There you go, that's the shapes that I want, okay. And then I'm gonna say, let's weld those. So we're gonna weld it, and now I have a big overall shape, which is fantastic. Now, the last little task that we have to do in order to get this ready to cut is, well, I lied, there are a couple last little tasks. First, we're gonna rotate this 90 degrees and 90 degrees again, because I want that to be the top and the leaves to be at the bottom. So I'm gonna say, okay, so it's 180 degrees. Now, I need this to fit inside the shape that we've welded. Well, that's easy enough to do. I drag it up there, and now just by looking at it and the feel, I'm gonna go ahead and see until it gets small enough that it fits right inside this shape, because we don't want it to cut anywhere. I could measure, but you know, what would be fun about measuring when you can just do it by look? So once I'm happy with that, then I'm going to take my big old rectangle and I'm gonna bring it in there, and I wanna make sure, if I move this out of the way, let me just grab a hold of it, I wanna make sure that these are touching, because I'm gonna have to weld them together. So once they're touching, I'm gonna go ahead and select again, and I have this in here, and now it is all selected. I'm gonna say, okay, and guess what? We're gonna weld those portions too. So now that's welded together as a single piece. And all that is left is for me to weld together the top of my place card with the bottom of my place card, and I, again, can use the side of the screen for matching it up. And then I'm ready. Once it's there, I'm going to select everything that's on here. Okay, okay, let's weld it. Woo! And now that we have done all that and have this fabulous place card, it's time to cut it. So I'm gonna say okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut, make sure that my blade is set correctly. On my blade up a little bit higher, because we've been cutting with this machine a lot. And I'm gonna say start, it is gonna cut, and you're gonna end up with a fabulous place card. And of course, once you do all that work once, you can make a million of them. So here's our finished card, and I'm just gonna peel it right off, fold it in half, and there you go, fancy place card, nice and easy.